Welcome to Right on Track, a songwriting podcast. Thanks to Tone for tuning in. I'm Demi Michelle Schwartz, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on my songwriting journey. So kick back and relax, don't fall flat, and remember, stay right on track. Hey everyone, welcome back to Right on Track. Joining me today is a returning guest. This is her fourth time on the show, which is wild. So please welcome Matteson Gregory. Hey Matteson.
Hi, Demi. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I can't believe it's four
I
times. This is my
know.
fourth time on the show, but that's very exciting though. I'm really excited.
Yes, the listeners love you, and I'm so excited to have you back again. So, what have you been up to since the last time you were on, which was around last fall? It's been a while. So, what have you been up to since then?
Yeah, so lots of like personal things. I got married in November, so that's a
Yay!
big thing. Yeah. And then I've been really working on recording new music and booking more shows, and that's really what I've kind of been up to since then. I got married and then kind of dove straight into getting back into music.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I'm definitely in a recording space too. I have been writing a lot and recording a lot, not releasing as much as usual because I'm preparing for another album. So I've been in a recording space. So it's always fun when you get to kind of go back to the creative side of things and not focusing as much on the releasing and the promotion, but the creative side.
Yeah, I think it's like I always say, I think it's good to kind of take a break from releasing in a way and really kind of figure out what kind of you want to say too as an artist and like
Yeah.
figure out and polish all that stuff. So awesome. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, thanks. You too. You've been doing so much, and we're going to be chatting about your new single too later on. But let's dive into our chat today, which is going to be a great one surrounding balancing a music career and a personal life. And to kick things off, you have a great quote. So, can you read that?
Yeah, this is a quote by Jana Kingsford, and it goes, balance is not something you find, it's something you create.
So, I know we both like this one a lot. Why did you connect to this one?
I think I connected to this one specifically because they always say like you need to have a good balance of stuff, but I think, finding that great balance does mean, you have to create that balance for yourself because I think kind of a good balance of things is different for everybody, if that makes sense in a way. I think everyone kind of needs to find what works for them to make them feel like, okay, I've got this. I'm able to focus my attention here as well as over here. I'm able to really give my attention kind of equally and not feel crazed, I guess. So I really agree with that. I think you need to really look into and find that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like how it's saying it's something you create, not something you find, because I definitely think that when you're looking at creating a balance of your personal life and whatever you may have as a career path, you need to be active in the choices you're making of what you need to spend more time on, prioritizing things, and not just sitting around and waiting for things to iron out and be more balanced because it's the same kind of thing of like if you need more time for something, you have to create it. The universe isn't going to just give you more hours in the day. Sometimes I wish there were more hours in a day, but that's not the reality. And I think that it's also definitely individual because for some people, maybe they need to take a certain number of hours a day for self care or whatever. And maybe some people are more focused on these are the days that I'm doing work stuff, and then these are my off days. So it's definitely different based on who you are and your capabilities and what you're trying to do. And balance doesn't necessarily need to mean like completely equal split. Like you may need to spend more time on one thing than another. And so it's definitely an individual thing. And that's why I think it's really important to be active in creating that balance and not just sitting around and waiting for something to change. Because the other thing too is, like if something is out of balance, whatever that looks like for you, you start to notice that maybe you're tired or you're recognizing that you're not spending time with people you want to spend time with because you're spending it with someone else or you're focused on something else. And so when you start to realize things aren't exactly how you want them, that's definitely a sign to make changes.
Oh, for sure. And I think it kind of goes back to like self-care and even like for me, my mental health. I always can tell when something is not balanced or when I'm putting too much into one thing, especially if I'm ignoring taking care of myself because I'm a very hard worker. I'm very notorious for like staying up late and like literally making sure every minute, every second of my day like counts, like I'm working towards something. But
Yeah.
I think at a point in time, and my husband will tell me, he's like, you can take a break. You can like take an hour to like read a book or just like play your guitar or even just like watch a show. He's like, it's okay and stuff. And, I think it's so important to make sure, mentally you're good too. And that's something that I always try to do. Like if I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm being very anxious or I feel very anxious, I'm like, okay, I need to like take a break, even like 30 minutes just to like get away from stuff and everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. I tried to, especially at night, I always take time to read or listen to an audiobook or something, but I'm definitely not like a TV show type. Like some of my friends who like aren't in music or in a super creative industry are like, "You don't watch TV. What is wrong with you?" Because like I just don't like feel like I have the time. Like I'd rather spend it, like just chilling or reading a book or whatever. But I definitely agree with the whole mental health thing and recognizing when things aren't quite right. And I definitely feel the same way when I'm focused too much on, pushing a manuscript or dragged down with interviews or something. Like I love to do those things and I'm just like you working toward a goal. It's like for me, I feel like if I'm just hanging out down by the pool with like nothing for hours, I'm thinking of all the things I could be doing and all the time I'm considering to be wasted that I'm not working toward a goal. But it's not wasted time. And I think, those of us who are super ambitious, we sometimes forget that, taking a couple minutes or hours or whatever to just relax and recharge is super important because when we don't take that time, we start to feel the negative effects of that.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And, yeah, like I've been trying to like read 15 minutes before I go to bed or, just really find space and find time that you can just kind of unplug and, kind of disengage and really just, like you said, recharge because it's so important. And a lot of the times when I find I do more of those things and I take the time to like recharge, I end up being way more productive the next day or I find my productivity is like way better.
Yeah, that's so interesting you said that because that's where I was going to go next with, being in any kind of creative industry. Creativity is at the heart of that. And so if you're exhausted and you're anxious and you're stressed and all of those things, your creativity level is just going to massively drop. And so I definitely agree with what you just said about being more productive if you take the time to recharge and relax, then the next day and for a while after that, you're probably going to feel way more productive because you don't have all of this negative energy dragging you down. So another thing I wanted to chat about, which is how being an artist is a very unique situation because in a lot of other professions, they try to say to separate your profession from your personal life. So when you go home after work, you're not at work anymore and you're keeping them completely separate. But for musicians, we can't really do that because as songwriters, what we're doing is super personal. Our songs and our interviews and all of that is rooted in our personal lives. And so when we're quote unquote working as artists, we can't really separate ourselves completely from that. And so, what are your thoughts on creating a healthy approach to, having that personal side of being an artist and the businessy aspects of it while not taking that too far?
Yeah. I think the biggest way is to and I know it's easier said than done, but I usually try to have like a set schedule, or I try to set certain days aside when I look at my week. I'm like, okay, like Sunday, that's when I'll focus on maybe doing more art stuff. Like maybe I'll work on some demos or I'll write. Um, or like, and then I might pick another day during the week to kind of work on more like business stuff. Like, a lot of like, I honestly have loved going to a coffee shop and just working on, like, doing ads, pitching the playlist, doing all this stuff like that. It's hard whenever it's like, some artists are still working part-time jobs, or they might even still be working a 9 to 5. So it's kind of like once they're off that clock, their, like, artist clock kinda begins, you know? Like, I know, like, once I'm done kinda with my day job, I'll come home and I'm like, "Okay, this is my time to, like, work on stuff, to get stuff done as an artist." And, but then that's also the time, like, for example, with, like, my husband, he works a 9 to 5 too. So it's like when we come home, it's kinda like, "Oh, like, how do you find that balance of, like, spending time with him, but then also being like, "Oh, like, I need to work on my other stuff," if that makes sense. And I think the best way too, like I said, is kinda setting days aside. Like, I know me and my husband, we set a date night aside for us just to kind of focus on each other and kind of eliminate any other thing. Um, and yeah, like, I think that's kind of my advice, is kind of just setting, like, and I know it's easier said than done, but kind of like trying to pick out certain times where it's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do here. This is what I'm going to do here. And every week could be different, but I usually try to at least find a certain time where I can be like, okay, yes, this is where I'm going to like kind of disengage from being an artist and focus on my personal life, but or like this is where I'm going to like kind of be not selfish, but this is where I'm going to take the time to really like focus on my art and stuff. And I think it's really great when you have a great support system. Like my husband, he like, he works a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, but then like I have gigs on the weekend and he comes to pretty much every single one. And I'm very appreciative of that, because I know that that's like part of his weekend, part of his days off, and he has ambitions too. But I think we both have made it like, okay, this is what we're doing together. And then, kind of also separating our own time as well, if that makes sense. That may have been like a whole like word jumble, but that is the best way that I could explain it,
No,
really
you're
kind of
perfect.
just, like I think, like I said, just kind of picking your times and stuff and really kind of choosing to be dedicated. Like that's kind of what helps me, is kind of finding a schedule of days that I can kind of dedicate to certain things.
Right. And again, it's being active and creating that balance and
Yeah.
recognizing that, as a songwriter, a lot of the times and the things that we're doing, we kind of have to use up some personal time for that, but then also recognizing there's other things in our lives and completely disconnecting. Like I try not to answer emails after a certain time. Like I see them come to my phone, but I'm like, this can wait till tomorrow. I don't need to email somebody back at
Yes.
10 o'clock at night. And so like forcing yourself to kind of set those boundaries too. And even if you could do something, like if you have an hour break and it's like, oh, this is perfect, I could do this. It's like, wait, no, but you can also use that time for yourself or to do something else. Um, so I loved everything you said. And also with like the whole boundaries thing, I think like when you start getting into the things we have to do as artists, like playing the shows and doing the interviews and all of that. I think there's a balance of the business and the personal there too. Because as artists, we're putting so much of ourselves into what we do, but there's also this line in the sand kind of like not oversharing about a song or just from the other side too, like the people who are doing interviews or not or at shows, like not crossing the line and getting a little too personal with the artist. Like, there's so many times where, like, fans take things way out, like, out of proportion, like, with mainstream artists and, interviewers asking questions that are, like, a little too personal. So that's something also we're constantly dealing with, and it's not something we can completely avoid because if we're writing personal songs based on personal experiences, obviously we're gonna talk about those things. But I think we need to make conscious decisions of, like, how much we're sharing and with who.
Oh, yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's like because and like I've kind of told myself like, okay, like this, and it's always hard to see. And I think it has to like each artist is kind of different. Some people are very comfortable with sharing certain things that like, for example, like I may be like, oh, I don't know if I would share something like that, or it's just everybody's kind of comfort level, if that makes sense. But I think there is also like finding that balance as to like, okay, like I'm not going to share this, or like I think there's still a greatness in keeping certain things private, especially as an artist, um, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, completely. And the other thing too is like with social media, I try to, share some of my personal life online because I've always been like a super open person, but there's certain things
Yeah.
that I'm not going to post on my Twitter.
Yeah.
And so I think too, again, it's definitely personal from artist to artist. And, there are some artists who run their social media completely business. Like, you're not going to see a single picture on Instagram or a single tweet that has anything to do with personal stuff. And there's someone who, like me, who I definitely do a hybrid. Like, if you look at my social media, you see music stuff, you see like author stuff, and you see like random personal stuff and like what I'm up to. And I think that's the kind of balance I like because I like to show like there's a person behind all this. I'm not just an artist, I'm not just an author, but there are definitely people who take the more business approach to social media and it's definitely personal preference and it also has to do with comfort level and like what you feel comfortable with people knowing about you because you are in the public.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and I like that too. I kinda try to go about social media the same way because I want people to know, like, who I am, I want them to, like, feel like they can really connect with me. That's who we are as an artist, and we write these songs that we want people to connect with. So it's like, I always try to kind of course, like, push my music stuff out there, but I also want them to, you know, I want them to kind of see like what I think about certain things, or, what's going on in my life, and that kind of comes with like, like you said, that like line in the sand, like, okay, like there's a certain part like you're not going to cross. But yeah, like I think that's the best way to kind of go about that with social media wise, kind of finding that balance of personal and business.
Right, exactly. And I think another side of this too is with, business relationships as well. Like when you're making connections with radio presenters and bloggers and all of the people who give us platforms. I think when you're making those business connections, like I have industry friends who I'm close with and I share personal stuff with, but just because I'm friends with that radio presenter doesn't mean I'm telling this radio presenter my life story too. And so I think it's really interesting when you have industry professional friends because you're obviously going to share more stuff with them. But if you are in a situation where you're friends with somebody who's in the industry and they're sharing stuff that's kind of more personal, like not to go talk about that to other people, even though they're in the public too. And so I feel like there's this constant, kind of back and forth with, what to share, who to share it with, who your friends are, and recognizing that just because you're friends and you're in the industry, like those relationships are a little different than other relationships outside of the industry. So, I want to hear about your new single, which ties nicely into our conversation. So, can you share that?
Yeah. So my recent single is a song I wrote called Have You Seen My Friends? And it was really inspired by as I've gotten older, and I don't know if you've experienced this too, but it kind of seems like it can be like harder to hang out with your friends,
Yeah.
especially as you get older. Just like I know some of my friends, they have kids or they have jobs, especially too as like an artist, like my work days are the weekends because I'm gigging and doing that. And like, then I'll do other stuff during the week. where it's like their weekends may be free and, they have other things they have to do. And I kinda just realized I'm like, it it's kind of like a sad time because you're like, wow, like it just seems like, you can never hang out with them. And or it's like been like not like you used to when you were a kid and like I would have like sleepovers all the time or do girls' nights and it's like, just so hard to find like a specific time to hang out. And I kind of just felt like my friends went missing. And I wrote the song just about what I was feeling, especially going through that, but then, also what I want people to take away from it is that, even though you may not be able to see like your friends like you used to, like the true ones will always be there for you and have your back 100%.
Yeah, I love what you said at the end. That's so true. It was so interesting because, when I first listened to the song, it reminded me of a song I wrote called Make Time. That's going to be on my next album. And it's basically talking about, like making time for somebody who doesn't make time for you when you thought
Oh,
that
yeah.
you really cared about each other like equally. And I think it's kind of all ties together with what we've been talking about early on with the quote as well, with like, yes, we're all busy and 20s are a weird time.
Yes.
Like we're all busy, but at the same time, like you just said at the end with, the ones who really care, like they'll be there for you. Maybe you don't see them all the time. Maybe you don't talk as much as usual, but they're around. And, like what I've noticed is the ones who really care and the ones I really care about, like you'll find the time, you'll make the time, create the time for the ones who matter. And, it's one of the realizations of, like everybody's off doing a bunch of different things now. And I definitely have felt forgotten by people, which is fine. People come and go, different seasons,
Oh,
whatever.
yeah. Mhm.
But at the same time, it's like I know who my true friends are now. Like I saw people's true colors, and I know that, one of my best friends, maybe we don't talk for a month, but when we catch up on the phone for 2 hours, it's like we just talked the day before. And so, like, it's great to see, like, who your true friends are, but at the same time, I agree, it's definitely a sad feeling. Because, like, I was the one, like, even growing up in, like, middle school and high school and college even, like, my house was the party house. Like, we have the pool here and a lot of stuff. And so everybody would come over. Like, summers were, like, people would just text me, like, "Let's hang out, let's come over." And so, like, that was my house, and now it's, like, a ghost town, and it's kind of sad, but it's the reality too.
Yeah, no, like, same. Like, I mean, like, my house, it would always be like, "Oh, we're gonna do girls' night over here," and, like, all the girls would come over, and we would, like, just hang out, and, we would always do stuff, and, like, even, like, growing up, I had, a friend, like, she lived around the block and stuff, and so, like, during the summer, we would, like, tag between, like, houses and stuff, like, me and my sister would go over there, and then her and her sister would come back, vice versa, like, and it's like you miss those days and it's kind of sad because, it's like some of the people that like you grew up with, you don't talk to anymore or, you just lose touch. And there's also there's like a quote that kind of reminds me of like, people come into your life for like a reason or for a lesson. And I've, that quote has never been more true, like as I've like, especially in my 20s, like, I've realized that quote is, like, 100% truth. I've
Mhm.
had people who have, hurt me, and I think everyone has, and, you don't know why, or sometimes you just grow apart, and it's I don't wanna say the circle of life, but, like and, Lion King here, but it's kinda true. It's the circle of life, but then
Yeah,
you also, along the way, you meet new friends, and, it's kind of a bittersweet thing in all reality.
right. Yeah, and I think what's also really interesting is, like, as I've gotten older too, I feel like my definition of friendship has evolved as well. Like, growing up, it's like, oh, yeah, you have the best friend, the one you do something with every single day, have sleepovers on the weekends, blah, blah, blah. But, like, I consider you a friend, and we've never met in person.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
So it's like, I feel like it changes when you get older, and, it's like the people who you vibe with and the ones you have interests with and you chat with here and there. And, things change. And I think too, it's like, with this whole balance thing as well, like it's so much harder now to, see old friends and all that stuff, especially because people have moved out as well. And it's like, oh, well, I'm going to be in town this weekend. Yeah, well, I'm not going to be home. I'm going to be here, And so, like,
Yeah.
correlating times to hang out too is so much more difficult. But at least, like, finding time to talk to the people too. Like, the ones, like, what I really noticed was some people who are like, yeah, they're not my friends, was during COVID when everybody was stuck at home doing nothing. I've had people, like, I, like, would text people, like, hey, do you want to FaceTime? They were too busy. What are you doing? You're sitting at home, like, and you're not doing nothing. Like, how are you too busy? Nobody's leaving their house. So
Yeah.
that's when I started to really notice, like, yeah, you just don't care.
Yeah. No, it's a sad thing, yeah, like, I know, like, there have been a few times where it's like, "Oh, let's," like, yeah, I'd be like, "Yeah, let's all hang out," and then they'd be like, "Yeah, let's hang out," don't hear back, and then you saw they all hung out together without you, and you're
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
"Oh." I remember that broke me. I was like, "Oh, okay,
yeah.
um, okay." You know? Um,
Oh man.
but, like, I think, I'm just like, I'm just thankful for the people that are always gonna have my back, though. Like, I've had a best friend, her name's Victoria. We've been friends since high school, and she lives in Vegas now. And, like, we both, we don't talk to each other every day, but, I know, like, she'll always message me if she's having a hard time, or, like, I'll message her, just check in on how she's doing. And I mean, she was one of my bridesmaids, so it's like, and it's great to be able to know that it's like, okay, we don't talk every day, but it's like, I know you're going to have my back, and I know you're
Right.
always going to support me. I know, and I'm going to do the same for you.
Yeah, that's what matters, I think.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, just to kind of wrap things up, so you just released this single. So do you have anything else planned for the rest of the year, or you just focus on recording?
Yeah. So I do have some new music that will definitely be coming out this year. I won't give you guys an exact date because I honestly have no idea either. But there will be another new music for sure this year. And I'm also kind of still working on recording more music, and also just booking more shows and really diving into that. But I'm honestly like really really excited. I'm just about everything.
Yay, I'm excited for you too. I'm gonna be releasing one more single this year, my annual Christmas single, and I haven't written it yet.
It will come to you. It
I
will come to
know.
you.
I know. I've had ideas for it, and then it just nothing has stuck. And I know the elves are getting mad at me because I'm running out of time. But
Oh my gosh.
it'll happen.
It will happen. I believe in you. You've got this.
Thank you.
You've got this. Yeah, it's Christmas in July, so like
Right.
I bet something will come to you this month.
It
Like
has to.
it has to.
Right. Absolutely. So, just to wrap things up with our initial conversation, what are some last things you would like to share about balancing a personal life with a music career?
I would really just tell people to really, kind of do what feels right for you, and to not feel bad, as an artist. And y- I feel like you always want to be creating, you always want to be doing that, you want to always be like working at something. And, but don't forget that sometimes like the best like songs come from like living your life. So, don't forget to find that balance to, both create, but then also to both like go out and live life and get inspired, because I feel like that's where you'll kind of find your next song. If that might have sounded really cheesy, but that's um that's what I would say, find balance between creating and inspiration.
I love that. I completely agree. You have to live your life to find songwriting inspiration. So I think that was not cheesy. I think that was
Thank you.
perfect.
Thank
Oh,
you.
you're welcome. Well, it was awesome having you back again. Can you share with everyone where they can find you online and listen to your music?
Yeah, so you can listen to my music on all streaming platforms from like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and you can find me on all socials from Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and I'll be under Madison Gregory with the two T's. So
Can I just say, I don't know if I told you this before, I probably did, but you spell your name literally the coolest.
thank you. Thank
I
you. I used to hate it because I couldn't find a keychain with my name as a kid. But I've realized as I've gotten older, I'm like, "Okay, it's different and I like it." And yeah, it's definitely easier to find. So,
It's such a cool spelling.
thank you.
I love it. Well, on that
Thank you.
note, it was awesome having you back again for round 4. You're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love being on your show and just getting to chat, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's awesome having you back. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed another conversation with Madison Gregory. And of course, until next time, stay
Stay
right
right on
on
track.
track.